following podcast contains spoilers. Do not listen to this podcast if you haven't seen the movie.
We are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the First Order down.
This is the Bunzerelly Show.
Paul and Kevin with me. Kevin, I'm going to throw it to you. What were your initial thoughts, and what do you think about Star Wars, The Last Jedi?
I enjoyed it. I liked the movie as a whole. There were great action scenes. You know, Luke Skywalker steals the show.
Yeah.
Rian Johnson, you know, from meeting him and everything, it was awesome for him to actually deliver a pretty solid movie.
I thought so, too. You know, I was watching it, and I just, I felt like the movie was relentless. Like, it was just hitting. And I was like, the opening scene, especially, you know, a lot of the differing opinions kind of goes towards the characterization and people like not getting their questions answered, which we're going to kind of go down the list. But I thought as far as like the space action scenes, like you got Poe peeling out a starfighter and doing some maneuvers. The first couple opening, like it opened strong. Like I like the dynamic between Leia and Poe, where she straight up like slaps him and they actually have that like argument. And I think that's setting the stones for Poe to grow as a leader.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Paul?
I will say that I have really warmed up to it, having been able to think about it for the past few days. I did like the entire story goes around, they are being chased, there is this thing that's coming, and it puts a timer to it. They can't slow down, it has to be fast. I like it.
The first thing that like kind of split the universe in half, Kevin, I'm going to throw it at you because you and me actually talked about this, and we weren't sure where they were going with it, but the Leia thing. Because there's been a lot of heat about that. What did you think about the Princess Leia moment?
So, I mean, I liked it. You know, we talked about it earlier. I had two views on it. I was perfectly okay if that was the way that she went out because it was super well done. And then I was okay with being like, well, you know, she is Princess Leia. You know, we love her. She's Star Wars royalty, but we don't want to kill her off on film. Let's make her alive and then, you know, have her die in like a respectable way. I feel like episode 9 will probably have like some part of the beginning credits roll say something.
Yeah.
That's how they're going to do it instead.
You know, and we talked about it immediately after because we were like, okay, this is their chance. If they're going to do it, get their clean break. And then I was like, well, they blew their clean break. What are they going to do? But I think as far as respecting the actress, if they took that clean break, they would have thrown away like 40 minutes of Carrie-Fisher footage. So I kind of see how it was more respectful to keep that. And maybe had she not passed, they might have thought of like maybe redoing or reworking that scene or, you know, I don't know. I feel like I don't know how decisions were made concerning her death. And I don't know where, you know, obviously now I understand why they kept her, especially with her moment with Luke. But it was like, where are they going to go from now with her? So she's either going to say like, I'm thinking Poe's going to step up to the plate and later it's going to be like, oh, we just got word from Leia. Or it's going to be like, you know, somebody's going to put flowers on a stone and she died off screen or something. I don't know.
This is entirely spoilers, so you just force your way through outer space, the vacuum of it. And no, I'm just fine. I'm in a coma for like a couple hours.
Well, I could dig that because she's a Skywalker. And it was also a survival instinct that made that happen. I could buy all of that, especially I buy the coma because she's never done it before and it knocked her out. So the actual action, I could buy that. Maybe it was a little... I just don't know if that scene was necessary. Because I was waiting for that Force Leia scene. Like, I was really hoping to see that. So when you see it, it's like that those things you hope to see. You want to see Leia with the Force. So when you finally see it, everybody's got their split opinions on it.
It would have been the perfect time to kill her, and she needed to be out of the way for a little bit for the story.
Let's talk about Luke. So, Kevin, what do you think about, like, Luke's... Let's talk about, like, the overall portrayal and his dynamic with Rey. What were your thoughts on that?
I thought it was great. Like I said, I thought, you know, this was definitely like a Mark-Hamill, like, movie. You know, if you just look at the past, like, he takes that character because it's, like, this big role, and it's super emotional, so to see him in a different side of it in this movie was awesome. So he kind of played, like, the emotional side of the movie, and I liked it a lot.
See, that's a lot of the flack is like people were saying Luke was out of character and Luke was this and that. But my thing is like, he's 20 or he's 30 years older. Nobody's the same person that they were 30 years ago. And you know what I mean? Like, I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago. So I don't know what people were expecting him to do. And, you know, even skipping at the end, you know, and Paul had said to me coming out of theater that little, like, that final scene where he's brushing off his shoulder and everything was kind of a little hokey, but it would have been hokey had it not been that he was doing his little, you know, astral force projection. So it wasn't really happening. Go ahead, Paul.
I like the astral force and all that stuff, but when they just throw in little things like that, it just annoys me because it takes you out of the immersion of it.
The humor might have been a little too much, but I also think like fans were kind of cheering on because they were waiting for Luke's moment. So it almost, I know the word, it was like a little indulgent on itself, but I kind of appreciated it because it was like, here's your burger with cheese and the pickles and everything.
Don't get me wrong, I love that scene. That was an amazing scene, and it just made me feel like, oh, it just kind of broke the tension there for a second when he did that. Mm-hmm. You know, you're into it.
I have a rebuttal to that. So my feelings are, and I saw the movie 3 times in the opening week.
Mm-hmm.
When that scene happened,
mm-hmm.
and you see him levitating and everything like that, everybody that I was in the theater with went nuts. Like,
yeah,
it was just like, they're like, holy shit. But for me, I thought it was awesome because they speak about that, and I think we talked about it before. They mentioned that earlier about like the astral projection type thing when Rey and Kylo do like their little force connection.
Yes.
And I think it's like the first or the second one, and he's like, you can't be doing this. He's like, the force would like kill you for doing it. And then you see Luke do it at the end, and he does so much in it. Like, that's why I love the scene, because, you know, Luke was like the master Jedi of the film, so like he has those cool things that he can do. And I thought it was neat to see that, but the scene itself was awesome, and the crowd went nuts when he's like levitating. It was just like, oh.
The internet's full of trolls and everybody, so you don't know what's legit or nothing. But I actually have a friend that I've known for a couple, and he is like constantly reposting different stories of like people are protesting The Last Jedi. And all I'm saying is like there are people that are legitimately mad. And what I'm thinking is this, it's like, well, Force Awakens, you went really safe, and that got criticized. And this guy did some bold moves and took some risks. So it's like, you know, you're not going to make everybody happy, but this thing is different. And maybe because the internet isn't as it was in the days of the prequels. It's being inflated or amplified because of the internet.
You know, I've heard a couple of things because, you know, I work in a tech building, so everybody is huge on Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's like a split like line at work. People hate it. People loved it. You know, but I overheard people saying that, you know, there was a petition out with like 2,000 signatures.
Yeah.
Fans want to erase the Force Awakens and The Last Jedi from like the Star Wars universe.
That's what I saw.
Like, why? Like, Force Awakens was great. I liked it. It was, you know, it might have been safe. You know, it might have been a redo, but this movie was not. Like, none of, like, there might have been bits and pieces that you could say was pulled from other films like Empire, but it totally broke the cliche of, you know, Star Wars movies. Like, it's a completely different view. And I think that's what people are just not, you know, familiar with. Like, if they would have kept Snoke around, I think people would have been like, yay, you know, or they would have hated it still, and they would have been like, it's like Empire. You know, so you can't make everybody happy in it.
People don't like when things change. A lot of people wanted this Star Wars to just be the other Star Wars. Mm-hmm. They didn't want new things to come about, but it did, and most people like it. I liked it.
Yeah, well, they think it needs to follow a formula or be part of something. But like, okay, I know like Kevin wanted to know who Snoke was, okay? And, you know, and my whole thing was like, well, I don't want Snoke to just be another emperor. They killed Snoke, and that was a bold move. We know Star Wars, like Kathleen Kennedy's being very careful because directors are getting fired left and right when they're like, you know, they're not agreeing with the formula. And maybe this thing was just so bold that people were just taken aback from it. Whereas everybody thought The Force Awakens was like awesome the first time I saw it. And then when you go back, you're like, it was good enough. And then like, but I love Force Awakens. And I love that, like we said, it was a strong foundation because look where these characters went. But if Rian Johnson would just follow the formula, then we're just repeating the trilogy. Why do we want to do that? Why do I want to see you go through the motions? Because look where we're at now. Look where this movie ended. Because first, in the first movie, you killed the Republic. Now, all of a sudden, I mean, it's Kylo and Hux, like, in charge of this fractured... This is actually really cool. Because where do you go? You know, it's half a question like, where did you leave us? But it's also interesting because now both sides of the galaxy, now you're opening up for this like civil war where there is no controlling power. So that kind of really changes everything. I think it's actually like what I'm saying is, even though you put it, because my concern, and I'm ranting, but I really thought about this hard the last few days, was my concern was like, the ending of this movie felt like the ending of the trilogy. It was so grandiose and over the top. It was like, where do you go from here? But I think it's more interesting where you go from there because you have this potential of this Force Ghost mark-hamil, which I'm 90% sure is going to happen. So I don't know. What do you think about that, Kevin?
Like earlier today, I think I might have been like surfing the web, and I think I saw like Rian Johnson. He posted, or he had another interview. This is post movie release. And they kind of drilled into him about, you know, the whole Snoke deal. Mm-hmm. And he kind of gave it like the way he explained it, it works. And I understood it. And I was like, okay, cool. Mm-hmm. And it was more like they wanted to buck the trend of if you would have kept Snoke around and kept Kylo in the same exact role he played in the movie, mm-hmm. and he didn't change one bit, it wouldn't really make sense for Snoke to be there.
Yeah.
Because it would just be like Snoke's hanging around and Kylo's kind of on that full dark side like path. And I think that's why they got rid of Snoke. Snoke was just, you know, and Rian Johnson put it out perfectly. He said that if you look back at The Force Awakens, you hardly get any Snoke. You get this, you know, scene where you see Snoke and you're like, holy crap, he's like a giant, you know, he looks really cool. Like, who is he? What is he? And then the fan base went insane. And that's where your theories come from. And that's where your wish list of things that you want. Mm-hmm. But Rian Johnson explained it the best. He's like, the fans hype, you know, Supreme Leader Snoke.
Yeah.
Never did they ever say like they were going to like, you know, introduce Snoke. If they were going to, they would have. But, you know, I think that's where fans are kind of disappointed is that the hype train, you know, rolled into town with Snoke on the front of it, and people went absolutely insane for it. And, you know, when they kill him off so quickly and play it as if he's just not an important character, everyone's just like, what the you know, I'm okay with it. I like the way he did the film. I like the way it's going. You know, episode 9 is going to be awesome, especially with JJ coming back. It'll be interesting to see how, you know, he fits back into it.
Yeah, I think we're victims of our own like expectations. We did it to ourselves.
I really do like the way they actually killed him, how he was doing the whole prophecy during it.
Yeah.
And I had this weird feeling that when he was dying and being killed, that Luke was going to die. Because it had to be balanced. There's no way that... Because you could tell throughout, like, he thought Skywalker was his equal, almost. I'm doing this in air quotes. And just... no side can have that much of an advantage and it still feel like a good movie. No one can just be insanely more powerful. Saying.
If it's Luke and it's a broken First Order, it wouldn't have worked. So
yeah, because then he just would have destroyed all of them.
That actually makes a lot of sense. I had a funny thought, but I wanted to save it for later. But well, it's in my head now, so I'm going to say it. How did Luke give Leia those dice?
Oh yeah,
did that cross your mind, Kevin? Like how did?
So, my feelings on it, and it is a weird sequence. So, Luke, obviously, you see him take the dice from the Falcon when he's on it, on the island.
Yeah.
And then you see him give the dice to Leia when he does his little projection thing.
Yeah.
At the time, you don't know it's a projection, so you think it might be him. And then at the end, you see Kylo pick up the dice, and then they fade away. So,
I forgot about that. Okay.
When they fade away, it has like that blue aura around it.
Yeah.
So I almost feel like the movie, like those dice were like tied to Luke, so he was already doing like a Force Ghost thing. Because like obviously Leia left the dice there, which was weird.
Well, you know what? That explains it enough because I didn't realize Kylo grabbed him and it disappeared. I just assumed like Leia stuck him in her pocket. I'm like, wait a minute, that don't make no sense. But I had made the excuse that Leia's so attuned she could like, you know, in her head pick up the Force dice the same way because that Leia Luke connection goes back to Empire. Before they even knew they were siblings, like Leia, hear me, you know, that whole thing. Like they have that strong connection. There was even a part where Luke's on that planet, and just I forget exactly what it was, but you know, he said him and Leia have that moment of a connection of something. So I know that's there.
I think that's when Luke like reconnects to the Force. Like he has that night where like, you know, he's by himself, and like after Rey calls him out on, you know, locking himself off from everything.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's when he like reconnects, and it's like the first thing he like goes to, and then she wakes up out of the coma.
But you know what? I'm glad, like I said, like when we said before, this is their chance. I'm glad that they didn't rob us because that moment with Luke and Leia was really great. Just that little sweet brother sister, you know, Luke saying goodbye to her. That was worth it. And you know what? There's a history of Star Wars characters dying off screen. I mean, even Bail Organa. He was dead before we even knew who he was, and then we met him in the prequels.
I still don't know who he is.
He's Leia's father, and we we just assume he died when Alderaan blew up, and that was it. We actually saw him die before we actually knew who he was, but it's okay. It can happen. I mean, it's a giant galaxy. So yes, I'm on board with Leia dying off screen because I'm glad we had that Luke and Leia moment, especially since they're both gone now. But like I said, I think Luke's going to show up as a Force ghost. Speaking of Force ghost, this one's had a lot of mixed feelings on. So Kevin, I'm going to throw it at you first. Yoda.
Okay, so two things. One of the best surprises from the movie, it was Frank Oz, and it was a puppet and not CGI.
Yes.
And it was amazing.
Yes.
And that was probably one of the best scenes of the movie was Yoda, and that it wasn't the prequel CGI Yoda. It was an actual puppet, and it was actually Frank Oz. And I would almost say it stole the show for me because he's hilarious. He was like old school, like, you know, Yoda from Dagobah. And it was perfect, and I liked it a lot. And, you know, to go back on what we had just said with Luke and Leia and the scene they have on the salt planet, great.
Yeah, I think great.
There's that scene where he says that line where, and it was really cool because, you know, Carrie Fisher had already passed away. You knew she was dead. And he kind of says, nobody's ever gone forever. And I think that was a cool scene for like, because you know Luke will be back.
Yeah.
Like he has to. And then it's cool just to be like, well, they didn't kill Leia off. You know, she was going to have one of those like off-theme deaths. And it's like, you know, no one's ever really gone.
Mm-hmm.
And who knows? Maybe Leia will show up to Poe as a Force ghost. I have a big theory on Star Wars right now with this new trilogy.
Okay.
I feel like this new trilogy is trying to set up the future. And they do show it in the movie that other people are Force sensitive. Like, it's not just Rey.
Yes.
You got the little kids, and all of those are Force sensitive. But I kind of feel like a lot of the people around are Force sensitive. Like, I feel like even Poe, you know, because everybody has the midichlorian thing, but not everybody's, like, Force sensitive. I almost feel like Poe might be Force sensitive because, man, that dude flies an X-Wing like nobody else. And some of the things he does in, like, this movie are super cool. They're going to introduce, like, other things. So I'm going to be surprised to see a Force ghost Leia.
They've even, like, if you go to, like, Chirrut Imwe from Rogue One, who is very attuned with the Force, and you get characters like Maz Kanata, so that is a possibility.
I liked Yoda in that. I didn't realize he was a puppet. That's why he felt so much better. It's scary. He could just light that entire tree on fire.
Well, he's so attuned. Now, there's some funny things I actually read up on it. Now, my opinion was this. Because I am very, and well, Paul, you are too, but I'm a big Jim Henson guy. The puppetry, I'm like so in tune with that. And the problem they made with the Phantom Menace when they started it was a really bad Yoda puppet.
Yeah.
It was so bad they went back and slapped the CGI Yoda over because that CGI Yoda wasn't bad. It was a nice happy medium. But they tried to change his whole look, and it's like, well, wait a minute. How come, why does between 850 and 900 years old you have such a dramatic difference? Do you know what I'm saying? It was just like, now this puppet, it's me. I'm a stickler for it's really the Muppet fan more than the Star Wars fan. Because I look at this Yoda and I was like, he's a little off. But basically, I don't know. They're probably just working off old video footage. Maybe they didn't have the old puppet and they're just trying to recreate it. That I could all forgive. But what I liked was the movements. I liked the movements because he was a puppet and he moved like that. And the weird thing was he was acting like Goofy Yoda. And a lot of that, though, was a put on by Yoda. Because Yoda acted super goofy when he first met Luke to kind of trick him. But then he pulled it back a little bit. But the kind of mood and the nature of the conversation, it could have just been Yoda's giddiness. So I buy that. Do you know what I'm saying? Where it's like, you're Skywalkers, you know.
I do feel like that's kind of his personality. You ever there's a lot of really old people. They're kind of crazy. They're kind of nice crazy. I feel like that's still part of his character. It wasn't like that in all the prequels and things like that. He was really serious.
Now, when that scene happened, and Kevin, I want to get your thoughts on this because, like, I was so like, because I was just I was in this movie. Like, I'm down for whatever they throw at me. When they threw the Leia thing, I was like, yeah. I mean, I was just totally enthralled with this movie. And when I saw Yoda, I was like, bring on Ewan McGregor. I'll buy it. Like, I will just throw you my money. It'll be fine. But Rian Johnson made a very good point. And looking back in retrospect, it was kind of a good call. Because he said, listen, I would have loved to bring in Ewan McGregor. I would have done it. But for the same reason why I did the puppet Yoda, it's because Luke did not know Ewan McGregor Obi-Wan. As much as the audiences love him, it wouldn't have made sense. And that's why I went with puppet Yoda. Goofy puppet Yoda because what Luke knew. I mean, do you agree with that? I mean, as much as you and me are big Obi-Wan fans, Kevin.
I mean, my feelings on that is, I mean, I love the Yoda scene. It was epic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think they could have pulled an Alec Guinness, record and posted that up there.
Mm-hmm.
I think with today's technology, they could have made Ewan McGregor look like him. I'm just like, you could have made him look like an old Ben and made it work. But I was happy with Yoda. I was happy to get a Force Ghost in this movie before the ultimatum of Luke becoming a Force Ghost. So it was cool to see Yoda, who was like, that be all for like teaching everybody how to communicate, from the other side. So I liked it. I'm with you on the Ewan McGregor. Like, I feel like they're going to stall on that for so long. It's such a bad idea. Mm-hmm. They would make a ton of money. A ton.
Well, they still could go for that, which I think is going to happen. I seriously think it's going to happen still because if they're looking, and it sounds like they're pointing towards an Obi-Wan movie, I can't see them doing it without Ewan McGregor. I can't see it happening. I can't see.
I think if they announced that they were going to do an Obi-Wan movie,
mm-hmm.
and then they announced that they had recast Obi-Wan, I think Ewan McGregor might flip him, go insane, because he has been so many interviews I've seen with him for other movies and other things he's done, and all he ever mentioned is I'd do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, he's on board and the fans are on board. So there's no way it's almost like the Hellboy thing on a bigger scale because they're rebooting Hellboy and some people. I'm not very attached to Hellboy, but I don't have it. But it's just like
he looks awesome.
Oh yeah, he does. But I'm not that it doesn't bother me. What I'm saying is he's there. He's willing to do it. We've even when the first prequels, and he had that ponytail and then he had his mullet. Nobody ever complains about Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan. Even his vocals in the beginning. And speaking of Obi-Wan, another thought crossed my mind was because I did a revisit on A New Hope, and I was watching A New Hope, and I was realizing, because you know everything you know now, and you kind of you look at things with fresh eyes, and you're realizing that part where Obi-Wan says to Darth Vader, and he goes, "Strike me down, I'll become more powerful than you can imagine," and it's twofold because it's to die to train Luke, but the other thing was he bought them the time to escape the Death Star because that was more important. And it's as soon as Luke said the line, before Luke even said the line, it's like he did it he did that on a grander scale. But the fact that he actually said the words, so it wasn't like, I'm doing it again. Like, I learned this from Obi-Wan. So that's why I really appreciated that, like, because he's stuck on that planet. I mean, I don't know if that X-Wing was working or not that was in the water, but he couldn't get there. He's like, here's what I have to do. I have to distract Kylo and get Rey to a place because I kind of pushed her away. It was my fault, so I need to fix what I did wrong. That's what I take from that scene because Rey does have the potential, and I think Luke knows it.
Well, I think Yoda kind of confirms that because
yes, he did.
Says to Luke, he's like, we lost Kylo. He's like, but we can't lose Rey. And you're like, oh yeah, okay, she's super important.
That was interesting that actually mentioned Rey by name. Like that actually gave her some weight and some importance. You know what I'm saying? I
like the scene where he mentions the Emperor instead of calling him Emperor Palpatine. He says Darth Sidious.
Yes, like, Sidious. Yay. That was cool. That was cool, and it makes sense because you'll figure this out. You've been talking to Force Ghosts for obviously Darth Sidious. The more tuned you're gonna respect their Sith names. The Rey Kylo thing. Now that took some twist because it looked like it was going to go one way and then it went the other way. So, and that was real interesting because how can I explain it? It wasn't like she has a connection to Kylo, but she had that Force connection. And then she looked at his side of it, confronted Luke. But that was interesting. Paul, do you have something for that?
Yeah, to me, it feels absurdly balanced. Like it's superly well balanced where there's the good side and there's the dark side. The good side always wants to help the bad kind of wants to be helped, and it gives us such a great narrative so they can actually interact with each other. It's not just hitting each other with lightsabers and attacking with armies. They were talking. They're still people. They do that.
Yeah. It was natural.
Yeah, it was a great platform for them to do it. Mm-hmm. It didn't feel forced at all, even though it was actually forced by Snoke.
Yeah, it's weird because where Kylo ended up at the end, because it's like, okay, didn't necessarily turn bad again, but he was just like, you know what, screw all this stuff. And a lot of it was actually Rian Johnson kind of talking, I think, where he's just like, let's wipe out the whole slate and start clean. It's almost like, well, he's revisiting the same things Luke's visiting and everything because history is repeating itself. Luke knows it, and Kylo knows it. And in Kylo's mind, he has that betrayal by Luke, even though you find out it was more like a misunderstanding. Like Luke even says it was a weak moment. Also, I love the green lightsaber made its appearance. I wanted to see the green lightsaber at least once, which I didn't realize it was a clue you should have caught on because the blue lightsaber showed back up. Because in my head, I'm like, did he build a third one? Did I miss something?
We'll be right back.
Are you looking for a way to make some extra money? Well, have you considered being a driver for Uber? Now you can make money when you want on your time. And right now, the Bunzerelly Show has teamed up with Uber to bring you a special offer. If you go to our link on the episode description, you can make a guaranteed $200 on your first 30 trips, and Uber will pay the difference if you don't make the $200.
Terms and conditions may apply. Go to uber.bunzerelly.com for more details.
Or look for the link on this episode description.
Going back to like where you guys were, like with the Rey and the Kylo thing, and seeing how Kylo, ended. I almost put it, and I think we talked about this too, Joe, was that I kind of felt like Kylo took his role and kind of went like the Anakin route. Because when you look at episode 3, and he's right before he fights Obi-Wan or Mustafar, he has a scene with Padme, and he's like, I'm stronger than the Emperor. He's like, I can overthrow him. We can rule together. And I kind of think like Kylo was just like, and that's that whole like role and quote he keeps saying, let the past die. Mm-hmm. I think he just got to the point where he was like, I'm gonna put everything behind me, kill off everything, and just take over myself. And I like that idea. Yeah,
because we never saw Vader go that far.
Well, no, you never see that because Vader never. Well, you only see that like kind of like in Return after he saves Luke.
Yeah.
But like you think about it, like if Vader hadn't turned Luke over, or if Vader hadn't stopped Mace Windu from killing the Emperor, like how would things turned out, you know? So it's kind of like in that retrospect. So I like how it is, you know. Kylo is kind of like, now he's his own person, but I just think he's full on, you know, bad guy now. Like, I don't know how they're going to do it in the third, you know, ending trilogy, but it'll be interesting.
We never saw what happened if Vader did this. So now Kylo's doing it, but Kylo's not even Vader. I mean, Kylo's not even. A quick note, as I liked that right in the beginning, I loved the line, and he said, "Take that ridiculous thing off your face," and he goes, "You're just a boy in a mask." Like, I loved all of that. Because, like, you stand up and be you, bro. Like, which, like, me as an audience member, and I told you this before, like, I want to see Kylo spread his wings. I understand, you know, you came out the box smart. Like, hey, I'm not Vader. I wish I was as good as Vader. But now you're here. So be you, bro. And it's cool, and I like that. Because another fan problem that I'm hearing or reading into, I don't know if it's a problem, but I don't know what the consensus is. If people are really disappointed with Rey's heritage, I'm glad Rey's parents aren't anybody. That would have been so forced. And why do Rey's parents have to be somebody for Rey to use the Force? Nobody knows who Obi-Wan's parents are. Nobody knows who Mace Windu's. Like, why? Are you telling me if you found out Rey was, and I almost thought they were going that way, where Rey was going to be like Kylo's lost sister, like, that would have been better? Like, what? Like, did you have any expectations of Rey, Kevin? Like, did you think that needed to go anywhere? Or
I was happy with it, and that goes back to, you know, how they kind of wanted to broad, you know, the view of Star Wars to like get away, because you had to get away from the Skywalker, you know, name to move forward, because, you know, they're not going to be around forever.
Yeah, they're not.
You know, you had to introduce Rey as somebody who, you know, Qui-Gon Jinn way back in Episode 1 kind of explains it to Anakin, and he's like, everybody has, you know, midichlorians. You know,
yeah,
everybody has the ability to do it, but it's just not in everybody to do it. And I think it's cool that they just come out and say, you know, Rey, your parents were nobodies, and they dumped you for, well, alcohol money, which is just hilarious.
I think it makes her more interesting.
And it makes her more interesting because now she's going to be, you know, the new Jedi. She's going to be the new, I would potentially see her becoming the new, like, master, which would be a total flip for Star Wars because it'll be a female, like, hard lead, which I'm super cool with.
Yeah.
Because I like Daisy-Ridley. Like, I like her character, but I also don't know what else she's going to do, because she's even come out and said that the third movie was going to be her last, because that's the only contract she has is a 3-picture deal. So,
she said that?
Yeah, she's had an interview or two where she actually says that the third one would probably be her last movie, and she's like, it's not that I don't want to keep doing it. She's like, I would just like to end it in a good place and be done with it. She's like, I also only signed a contract for 3 movies.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Me neither.
That can always change. You know, they could just be like, here's a check with a lot of zeros on it.
Yeah, like, yeah, no one thought Harrison Ford was going back.
Nah. Yeah, I've been trying to go back way to Kylo-Ren. You know, we're getting too far ahead. I don't think he's a villain. To me, he's not a villain. He's confused. Like, he said, I want to rebuild, let's restart, but we need to get rid of everything else. To me, that's not evil. Yeah, we got to kill a bunch of people to do it. That's really evil. But he's still willing to change. He's not, I don't want to torture people. He's not wanting to do anything bad. He's angry, but he realizes there needs to be balance. You can't have no giant evil villain. You can't have Snoke and have Skywalker. You need to get rid of them both. You can't have just one or the other. It needs to be balanced.
Here's the problem where Kylo is now. The thing is this. It's like, okay, Vader was straight up full of hate, and he hated himself. He was just, he killed, you know, thought he killed his wife, and he's just full of freaking hate. And even like the Vader they gave us in Rogue One was consistent, because that's like, I don't give a shit about anything but this Empire thing I'm doing. And you could see where he came from, and he's focused on that. Here's the weird thing about Kylo. Kylo is still just unfocused. Like, he's a sloppy Sith. He really is. Because even like that little, and that's how Luke played into him, where he just has that I always say AT-ATs. I don't think it's right. I think it's AT-ATs. But he has that like AT-AT just like pummeling him.
Oh yeah.
And Hux is like, I think you got him, bro. You know, like Kylo.
He's still a kid.
Yeah,
he's still a kid. He's still trying to learn, trying to become himself. He's like 20-something.
But now here's the important thing. If you're going to end the Skywalker saga, now Kylo is technically like the last of that Skywalker bloodline. So what his role is going to be, because this is, I'm not saying from the Force standpoint or from like the mythology standpoint, but I'm thinking from the studio standpoint, is like, this is it. So whatever you do with Kylo is the Skywalker legacy. So yes, it's smart to end him on a, I mean, I don't know if it's smart, but it seems like they'd want to end it on a good note, but it would be like, who Snoke's gone, so who's he gonna, how's he go good now? What else is there to do? Or does he die a hero? That's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you're gonna, this is the next movie, one way or another, ends the Skywalker saga. So unless it's Luke doing it as a ghost, but that's the real curious part, because I don't think the next trilogy is going to be Skywalker based. I don't see how it can be.
I don't think the next trilogy is, but here's my prediction. If Rey or anyone kills him, that's it. Then everything is bad and they have all failed. Because the idea of good is you don't need to kill your enemies. That's what bad people do. Mm-hmm. If they're trying to make him good. He has a sense of good in him. Like, he's not murdering people for fun. He knew Snoke was evil and horrible. He killed him.
Yeah.
So I think as soon as Rey or someone kills him, then it's just a failure. And it would just feel horrible for him. Like Luke did. Luke wanted to kill him and he felt awful about it. Because that's not what the heroes do.
But now that I think back, now that I look at it, I don't even know why he killed Snoke. Because first I thought he was turning and he didn't, and maybe
he did.
Maybe he's had it with everything.
He did. He was like, let's restart, let's destroy everything, and we can start out from a new good place. He never wanted to keep going, I'm going to be the Emperor now. He never did that. I mean, he kind of did whenever Rey didn't agree with him, like, okay, now we need to take care of it. He still tried to go after the plan of, okay, we need to destroy the rebels and the Empire, start over. Mm-hmm. That's not an evil plan to me. To me, that's something a good person would do.
No, it was a long temper tantrum. It was a long, like, he just kind of went on his direction, and it just, that's what I'm saying. There was no plan. I mean, I don't know. Where do you think his head's at, Kevin? Or what do you think about all that?
For me, I like Kylo. I like
him too.
I like him. He is super emotional, and his character is so much built upon in this movie than it is in The Force Awakens. I like where they're going with it. Now, I kind of agree with Paul. You know, it's hard to say, you know, where do you go? Like, if you're going to end the trilogy with the Episode 9, you know, where do you end it? Like, is it just going to be... And I have a few theories. You know, my wish list for Episode 9 is I must see the Knights of Ren. Like, that's like one of the top theories right now, is that they're going to get reintroduced.
You mentioned that before, but I remember Snoke saying he was the last of the Knights of Ren, unless I missed something.
So they keep pulling it, and like, okay, so let's go back to The Force Awakens. You know, Rey has her first Force vision. She sees a lot of things. You kind of see the R2 scene where he's sitting by the campfire. It's not really a campfire, but it ends up being the Jedi Temple on fire. But then you get that scene in the rain where you see Kylo, and this is Kylo in helmet and everything, with like 6 or 7 other people around him, and you assume that's the Knights of Ren.
Yes.
Because that's just his group. And then they also say it, you know, the master of the Knights of Ren and stuff like that in The Force Awakens. And then in this movie, you kind of get that reaffirmed when Luke says that, you know, Kylo, you know, took a handful of pupils and, you know, slaughtered everybody else and left. So it kind of leaves you like, well, where'd the rest of the Knights of Ren go? Like, where are those people at? And they're like supposed to be a group of bad guys. I don't see like Kylo doing like the whole like, I don't need anybody, so I'm going to kill all you guys. I kind of think like they might have just been like hiding or off doing their own thing. And I think now because Kylo has, pretty much taken over, I hope to see him call them in so that he has like a group of bad Force users to fight, Rey. And I think that's like my top thing for episode 9. The only other thing I think they could do, and what I want to see, is you haven't seen a lightsaber battle between Kylo and Rey since Force Awakens, and I kind of want to see another one because now Rey's kind of gotten more in tune and she's a better, lightsaber user.
Yeah, she hasn't had her big fight yet.
Yeah, I want to see them have another epic duel and see where it goes.
Yeah.
That's just my thoughts. I mean, I like Kylo. I like the way they portrayed him. I think it's going to be hard for them to do in episode 9. It kind of makes sense of him still being good or confused.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, there's good, there's evil. There has to be that, balance almost. So if Kylo kind of turns back to the good side, well, then who's going to be the bad guy?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Who does Kylo throw down the shaft? Hux?
Hux.
General Hux / Hug, he's going to end up getting killed by Kylo just because of how much he got thrown around.
I'm so surprised he's lasted that long.
Yeah, he seems like,
Like the one scene where he's like, take me down to him. And he's like, sir, I don't think so. And he just throws him up against the wall. And he's like, right away. Going down. There's so many things that I wanted out of this movie, and I got so many different things that I'm happy with. So it's just, and my biggest thing was I really wanted to know who Snoke was. But then seeing how they did it and knowing how they did it, I'm okay with it. I'm not like most of the Star Wars fans. They're all up in arms, holy crap.
Yeah, another going to that, as far as the expectations and stuff, one of the things that was a surprise for me that really made me happy, it was a small little detail, and I kind of caught it right away, and it just made me happy. It just answered a long question of mine. First of all, one of the complaints was not to, and like I said, it's not a complaint because I was seeing things on the internet, and I was reading lists and the top 5 reasons. I've been afraid to listen to actual other Star Wars podcasts because I want to get my podcast out first. I'm going to start listening to all the other ones. But one of the things was the Finn scene was a little off track. But what I liked about the Finn scene, because it didn't develop Finn much, but what it did was it kind of broadened the galaxy. And anytime anybody does that, I like. And Dave Filoni's a master of that. And what they did was showed what the First Order is doing. These are the results of the First Order. The same way Rogue One was here's the implications of the Empire. But my favorite thing that made the whole thing work, it didn't make the whole scene, but when Benicio del Toro, he was a code breaker, but it was a little thing that bugged me, and they kind of fixed it where he goes, look, yeah, they sell weapons to both sides, which it made me so happy because that's the thing. If you go to the prequels, okay, so the TIE fighters are pretty much their predecessors are Republic ships. And then X-Wings are Rebel ships. But there's a version of an X-Wing on the Republic ship. So it's the Republic, good or bad, becomes the Empire. So how do these ships go back and forth between sides? So I liked was the actual answer is right there. It's just these manufacturers that are just selling these planes. It's the same guys are building both sides ships. So that it actually fixed something me personally I liked. It was somebody summing up a problem with Star Wars. How do these ships jump on both sides of the fence? So I was happy with that. And as far as Finn's development, maybe that's my legitimate complaint thinking about it now. Because Finn kind of staying in the same place. He did the same thing. He tried to buck out and run and then finally made that choice to be the good guy, which was okay. It was characteristic of him, but I would have hoped he would have grown from that. Granted, he was focused on saving Rey, but that part, I'm realizing these things as I'm saying, but that part where it looked like Finn was going to die the hero, I kind of wanted it to happen. Not because I love Finn, not because I hate Finn, but I feel like that would have ended his story perfect. Now that it hasn't happened, I understand why the studios did it, because they're trying, it's even the marketing, it's Rey, Poe, and Finn that they're bringing forward. So but I don't know where Finn goes from now. I feel like what I'm saying is I feel like Finn kind of flatlined in the movie. You know what I'm saying? He didn't grow or anything. He just did his Finn thing.
I liked Finn, in the first movie. I liked the action scenes him and Phasma have in this movie. I like their little battles that they have. I just don't like his character at all. And it's not against the acting or anything. I just don't see a role. Like, I don't see where he fits in. And I agree with you. I wish they would have just, like, let him die.
Yeah.
And I liked the Rose character. But that, like, scene fell really flat for me. It was just like, why? Like, you have a chance to stop it. People do that stuff all the time. Let him, sacrifice himself. And I just kind of felt like, that was kind of weird.
If Finn would have died, that would have been Finn's story. Like, it would have been powerful. Not like I wanted him gone, but that would have ended his thing. He would have died the hero.
My surprise favorite character was Benicio del Toro. And I guess there's been a book that's gotten released that's kind of like the tell-all of everything related to Star Wars for this movie, and it kind of lists the names. Like, it even named the boy at the end of the movie that, grabs the broom.
Oh, yeah.
Prodigy kid. They finally put a name to him because you never learn it. But supposedly, Benicio del Toro's name in the movie is DJ, or it's his nickname.
Okay.
And the D and the J stand for don't join. And it falls into what he tells Finn on the ship. And he's like, the good get rich, the bad get rich. They're selling to both sides. But don't join and don't worry about it.
He was very Filoni. He was a very Filoni-esque character, like a space pirate.
I'm hoping they bring him back because the way they end his thing, where he like makes the deal, takes the money, and goes, is kind of befitting. It's kind of like a Han Solo type thing, where he's kind of like, I'm all about the money, and I just don't join and don't care about what's going on. I'm looking out for me. But I'm hoping they kind of like bring him back in because of the way he leaves, and he's like, maybe, and then he kind of like just walks away.
Do we want to talk about like the graphics or the other planets and stuff? What about the ice planet, the red?
Well, it wasn't an ice planet. It was a salt mining planet, which was weird. Like, the thing that I liked was where you see the Falcon flying through like the cave, and like there's all those crystals. For a second, I thought they were like lightsaber like crystals, and I was like, no, those got all taken up.
Yeah, kyber crystals. Yeah.
So like, I don't think it's that, but it was really cool to see that. And then I like the casino planet. That was really cool. That was like a planet you'd never seen before, but it was a cool thing to kind of like show you like that side of, how's the Empire have all these cool toys? I was watching the Batman movie, and it's like, where did he get all these toys? And
R2 and 3PO had very small roles, which I liked because their story has been told. And I feel like anything else you do with those guys, like, I don't know, like, why taint their thing? They've done enough. R2 had his moment with Luke that I wanted. I wanted that R2 Luke moment, because they go way back. I love the Leia hologram thing. He goes, cheap trick. That scene, those are my favorite. Those little moments are the real gems.
Well, it's because you want those, like, reconnections, because it's coming down to Carrie-Fisher passed away, so you want the Luke and Leia scene, because you haven't had it since, Return of the Jedi. So you want that. So you get that. And then you want, like, Luke to reconnect with, his buddies, and that's Chewbacca, and then he sees R2, and then he sees 3PO, and he gives him that wink. And it kind of goes full circle. So now he's said everything, he's done everything, and then, now he's, set sail. So it's cool to see, that all come together. It's funny, as we talk about this, I'm looking at the R2-D2 I have in my
Rian Johnson had said, like, look, Luke's story, as far as I'm concerned, ended in Return of the Jedi. He's like, this is all about where he takes his role in Rey's story, and I agree with that. Like, I like his nods, I like his moments with the other people, but it's really, moving forward, it's got to be about Rey's story. Because what could be bigger for Luke than pulling his father from the dark side? You know what I'm saying? Like, for the franchise, he needs to take that back seat to Rey, and I think the way he died and made that sacrifice, I think it was characteristic because he would know looking back what Ben did for him. So I disagree with anybody. I challenge anybody to tell me that wasn't characteristic of Luke Skywalker, because I think that's how Luke has grown. And Luke made the same mistake with Kylo. Ben made those mistakes with Anakin, and I think everything is consistent and everything makes sense. I don't, Paul was like, didn't think it was the best one, and I thought it was crazy good. Now that I've settled, I was like, okay, it takes its place among the others, but I definitely don't agree with people that are like, if you think this thing needs to be wiped out of the existence, I mean, I don't know what your problem is, because I don't even think my least favorite is 2. Like, my least favorite is 2 just because nothing even, like, Jar Jar I could get over. But my thing with 2 was, like, 2 is a lot of, like, a long road to nowhere. Like, and it's not, I'm just saying if I had to stack them in order. But I definitely, like, I don't see how somebody gets so angry over Last Jedi. Maybe just because it was bold and took some risks.
A lot of the things I didn't like about it were mainly aesthetic things.
Yeah.
Like the little, like, furry things on Luke's planet or that island.
The porgs.
Yeah.
You didn't like the porg?
Why did you put those in? You were putting them in so the fans like them. Don't do that. Do things to be...
So the thing with the porgs is, and you got to remember, Star Wars is owned by Disney now. And what is Disney's number one thing
Toys.
with their movie releases?
I will
Toys,
give it...
merchandise, that extra dollar that they make. You know how many porg things I have seen that are super cool looking, but are just like, everybody wants to have one. And it's because, they're neat little characters. They're like little chickens. And there was actually a magazine I was reading that actually shows all the pieces. Like, they, like, took 5 different things from different characters and built the porg, which was kind of funny. Like, there's bits of gremlins thrown in there.
Yeah, I did get a good gremlin feeling from them.
The best scenes, though, are when Chewbacca tries to eat them, though.
Yeah,
right.
I like that, though.
Oh, well, at least they weren't, like, putting logs on ropes and, like, just decimating stormtroopers.
Oh, yeah.
At least they served their purpose. They made a joke, they were cute, and they laughed, and they kind of wandered on like the ship with Chewie. So it wasn't like they were like a race of, they weren't like the Ewoks where all of a sudden they're like killing the Empire with logs and ropes. So I would say, if they served their purpose for that, but they didn't like bother me. Basically most of the porg stuff you saw within the trailer.
Yeah, I mean, nothing beats the porg, like Chewbacca doing his like scream and then the porg going, yeah. So it's a marketing thing. Disney created it to make extra money off of it. Stuffed animal for the kids to love, and that's what it was. Yeah, I think the only thing we didn't cover would have been the lightsaber fight after Snoke dies with the guard. The thing I don't think we touched on.
Oh yeah,
that was cool. I liked it.
That was good. That was an intense scene. That was really great.
I was thinking, like, why does the most powerful being in the universe have guards? Oh wait, no, they're actually really insane themselves too. I like.
Well, the Emperor had guards, so it was reminiscent of that.
But they never did anything.
Yeah.
These ones did.
The only time you ever see those guards move is when he says, "Leave us," at the Return of the Jedi.
Yeah. I was saying Snoke's guards had one job and they blew it.
Yeah.
The one thing you got to do
went
is
pretty close though. Like,
make sure I don't get cut in half.
Well, yeah, I mean, I like that scene a lot. Like, that was an epic, like, little lightsaber scene. And I like the way Kylo fights. It's like a medieval, like, knight type deal. Like, he's got, like, a broadsword.
Yeah.
He fights like he has a broadsword.
He's got a lot of anger in his fight, too. Big stabs, large slashes. A
lot of heavy attacks. Rey's going to be my favorite, like, lightsaber user now because she's the first person to, like, because I liked playing, like, the Force Awakens games when they came out. And I liked the idea that the way he held his lightsaber was, like, he held it from the back end of it, and he had it facing, like, towards the back of him. So it's not, like, out front, it's behind him. And she kind of does that, like, when she's where she's practicing. And then she does it when she kills that last guard before she does the epic, like, here, I'm going to toss my lightsaber to you. And he does the one-off in the guy's head.
Well, I like how on the mountaintop they show her with the staff again to kind of remind us before she grabs a lightsaber. Like, she is... Like, her hand-to-hand, the lightsaber, like even Finn carrying a lightsaber, is swinging a stick around is, maybe the Force helps with that, but She's just basically hand-to-hand fighting trained. And even though she develops that with Luke and are like in tune with the Force, she is, from just her surroundings on Jakku, she is a trained fighting. So I just remember now when Luke goes, "Oh, Jakku, you are from nowhere." But
yeah, I was gonna say that. I was gonna bring that up when you were talking about.
Oh, it was great. And that scene where her and Kylo go back to back, like I did not see that coming. Was freaking awesome. Like
Yeah, it was
that,
good.
I think that was the spike of the movie where the movie took its. I think that might have been the best part of the movie. Actually, looking back at it.
And there's another scene I'd like to touch on, where when they're learning about visions and all that, and there's this big gaping hole somewhere on that island, and they're in that big like mirror universe or wherever.
Yeah,
that would seem really, this is what the Force visions are, And then it's just nothing. It's just a cave.
Well, I think it was like the Dagobah tree, pretty much. It was pretty much go in there and you're going to find your thing. It was that same moment for Rey.
It plays off, and I was actually happy that they kind of showed it, because that kind of goes almost to, for me and you, Joe, because we're fans of the animated. I don't know if Paul, you watch it.
Yeah, I've seen a few of the episodes.
For me, that was really cool to see that there was, even though it was, where a Jedi temple was, there was a dark side to the island. Just like there was a dark side to Dagobah and being Yoda's home. Mm-hmm. And it was just neat to see, like, when she went down there. Because, like, with the Sith, it's usually about, self, like, want and self-worth. And it's all about you for the most part. And that's why it has that, like, mirror-type glass feeling. So when it does come to, like, fruition and she sees who it is, it's herself. Because that's what it wants you to think.
Yeah.
It like just wants you to be you, and that's where like the dark side like kind of ties in. But it was really neat to see.
What do you want to see happen in 9? And like, where do you want to see this franchise go?
For me, I want to see some Knights of Ren. That's my number one. Because I want to see Kylo kind of like have his like forces put together, because he's on his own now. And I'd like to see Rey kind of like start looking or kind of like searching out, like, maybe like for pupils type thing. Like, are they going to like reconnect with that little boy that you see at the end, who's like kind of like looking out at the stars? Like, is he going to get introduced? Are they going to like somehow like make a connection? And also I want to see if Rey does a new lightsaber. Is she going to do a lightsaber, or is she going to do like a staff type lightsaber? Because now she's got the intact crystal, but she doesn't have the lightsaber. So I want to see that. So that would be cool to see.
I want to see some more development with Kylo. I feel like they're working really strong and hard at it. It feels really natural. I like the way it's kind of going. Like, he could still turn out evil. He could turn out good. I feel like there's a lot you can do with that character where he sits right now. And I want to see them really dive in deep to it.
What makes this different from any other of, going through the motions and repeating the steps and everything? So instead of like, a strong good side and a strong bad side, you got like two broken factions. So the real question is like, it's almost like a riot in the galaxy, I would think, that it would set us up for. Also, I want to see Rey double-ended Darth Maul green and blue lightsaber. It's been my wish list from the beginning.
I want to see her have a dual lightsaber, because Darth Maul is still one of my favorite characters. So I want to see. I just want to see her create her own saber and kind of have her own design to it. Maybe put her own flair to it.
Well, hey guys, a lot of interesting stuff to look at, guys. Great show. Big thing. I want to thank both my co-hosts, Paul and Kevin. Thank you guys both for being here. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you guys in a couple weeks.